A big hello to all you savvies out there. In today's episode of Electronic Savvy, as part 1 of this 2-part series, we take a look at the schematic design of a portable 12-volt boost or step-up DC-DC converter with variable source voltage. We will look at component selections including input and output capacitors, the main switcher and the inductor, and many more. But before we get any further into the design, I'd like to thank our today's sponsor, PCBWay. If you're looking to turn your electronics projects into reality, PCBWay is the place to be. They offer top-notch manufacturing services, fast turnaround times, and excellent customer support. So whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, PCBWay has got you covered. Check them out today and turn your ideas into reality. Welcome back, you guys. We're going to go through the schematic design portion of this portable 12-volt boost converter today. At the heart of this design is LTC3122, which is a monolithic boost switcher IC. Monolithic means it has integrated transistors as the high and low side switches. So going around the chip, we can find 12 active pins. As you can see, they're placed as such. Then, which is pin number 3, it powers the chip and it takes as little as 0.5 volt input. We need to place appropriate amount of capacitance on this pin for proper operation of the device as well as optimal transient response. The next one is pin number 1, which is the switch pin. We place an inductor between the switch pin and the input supply. The equation given here estimates the minimum required inductance for this boost converter for optimal performance. I targeted about 30% inductor current ripple, which is conservative, and 1 megahertz of switching frequency. And with my input and output voltage set points, I need more than 4.86 microhenries of inductance, as you can see on this equation. So I picked the closest larger inductor in a standard 6.8 microamps value, and that's what you can see over here. The next pin is pin number 1, or not shutdown pin. Pulling this pin up resumes normal operation, while pulling it down via a resistor or a switch will shut down the converter. So I have this pin normally pulled up via this R2, so it means that this converter will operate on nominally as long as this switch, which is an SPST, is single pole, single throw switch, is not pressed. Once you press it, the switch will pull this pin down, which indicates to this chip that the chip needs to stop working. The next pin is the PWM sync pin, or pin 4. This dictates the mode of operation for this converter. It's pulled down here to enforce burst mode, which is a control mode in a boost converter where the switcher turns off at a very light load to improve power consumption. The next pin is RT, which sets the switching frequency. And as mentioned above in the inductor calculation, I have set this converter to switch at about 1 megahertz. The next pin is VCC, which is the internal regulator. This pin powers the internal circuitry inside the chip, and it has a 4.25 volt set point. It is recommended to put a decoupling capacitor. Datasheet recommends about 4.7 microfarad, so I put a 4.7 microfarad capacitor right across it to help with noise. We move to the other side of the chip where we have pin 11, or Vout, which is the output voltage pin, and the source pin of the internal FET. Lots of capacitance are required across Vout and ground, as you can see over here, for stability and minimum ripple. Output caps on the boost converters play a more crucial role than the input caps, mainly because the input section of the converter already comes with the LC magnetics. You already do have an inductor and a capacitor filter on the input side, hence it forms an LC filter and takes care of most of the input noise. However, the output side, as it's connected to the downstream load, has no significant filtering section, hence the elevated need for good filtering components, such as high quality ceramic caps with different capacitance values to improve noise and filtering performance across wider frequency band. The next pin right here, right next to Vout, is cap, which is pin number 12, and this pin is basically for the bootstrap capacitor. It provides an elevated ground rail, approximately 5.6 volts below Vout, used to drive the N-channel FET inside. I've already made another video that we talked about the purpose of bootstrap, but just in a nutshell, you need a bootstrap capacitor in any circuitry that uses N-channel MOSFET as a high side device, as it is in this case. The next pin is FB, which is the feedback input pin, or pin 8, which used to set the output voltage. I have calculated the output voltage using this equation, as you can see, to be 12 volts. Data sheet clearly demonstrates the equation needed to drive R1 and R3 values based on the output voltage set point. This equation right here. Also note that you should use low tolerance resistors, 1% or lower, for this divider network for the best accuracy. Additionally, placing a feed-forward capacitor across the top resistor helps with further reducing output ripple and positively impacting any potential noise across the resistive feedback network. One thing to note is, don't pick cap values larger than 10 picofarad-ish, or it will impact the speed of feedback control loop. The next pin is the VC, or the error amplifier output, which is the compensation network, and connects to an RC compensation network to compensate and stabilize the control loop. This is a very important feature of this chip because it allows us to have the flexibility to adjust the transient response and stability of this converter based on different input voltages, output voltages, and load conditions. There's a whole math involved in nailing down the exact RC value here that I picked, but at the end of the day, it comes down to trial and error in multiple different values in LTSpice or similar spice tools to get the most stable feedback loop with proper transient response and sufficient phase and gain margins. I have already run all these numbers, both mathematically and in LTSpice, and as you can see over here, these are the RC combinations needed to achieve proper stability with variable input supplies. In this board, we're using 3 volts and 5 volt supplies and a 12 volt output voltage at about 400 milliamp of load current. And as you can see in the LTSpice simulation, the converter stayed stable with about 1% of peak to peak ripple with the input and output conditions. The last pin is an exposed pad for thermal management. It needs to be connected to the board ground. So one thing to note, the efficiency of all types of DC-DC converters vary with switching frequency and load demand. In most designs, this one included, 70 to 80% of the max rated current is the peak efficiency, which is about 400 milliamp in this case, as you can see on this plot. Additionally, the lower the switching frequency, the lower the switching losses of the converter, which consequently increases efficiency. That said, lower switching frequency requires bulkier magnetics, so it's important to note that there is always a trade-off between efficiency, load current, and switching frequency in all switching regulator designs. As briefly mentioned, the design is stable with variable input supplies. Tested and simulated with 3 volts and 5 volt inputs, 3 volt comes from a coin battery and 5 volt is from the micro USB port. Now the question is, how do we select between the two input sources while protecting the circuit? Well, we diode OR the inputs with an OR controller chip, TPS2115 in our case. This chip allows for multiplexing the input power using ideal diodes, which is a P-channel MOSFET, simply by automatically shorting the out pin to the input power connected to N1 or N2, depending on which one is greater in voltage. Here I have the truth table indicating the logic implemented around this chip. In this example, I have D0 pulled up and D1 pulled down. So when voltage on N1 or the USB power is higher than the voltage on N2, aka battery power, output will be connected to N1, and when N2 is greater than N1, output will be connected to the battery. This circuit always prioritizes USB power when it's present in order to conserve battery power. I also put this LED indicator D1 across N1 and pin stat, which only turns on when micro USB is connected. You also need a current limiter R6 to limit the max current through the LED branch to under 5 milliamp, as I have done the calculation over here. Additionally, I set a 2 amp internal current via this resistor R8 to protect the device against dead short. I also terminated the USB's D plus and D minus pair to indicate that this device is for power delivery only and there will be no data traffic going back and forth along the data lines. So with that, this wraps up a quick overview of the schematic design portion of this portable dual supply boost converter. In this video, we've talked about component selection, design trade-offs, as well as design optimizations for higher efficiency, more stable feedback control loop, and good transient response to load fluctuations, as well as supply variability. In the second part of this series, we will cover the complete layout placement and design of this boost converter. We will talk about the best practices in component placement, routing, and stack up. So tune in to learn more about laying out DC-DC converter designs in Altium Designer. If y'all enjoy this type of videos, don't forget to drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe. Thanks all again for watching. We'll catch you all in the next video. Peace out.